Welcome to Craving the Heat, where desire takes the lead and every story leaves you wanting more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest naughty stories. It had been nearly 12 years since I last saw her, and yet when I walked into that hotel ballroom, decorated with banners of our graduating year and tables scattered with glasses of champagne, my eyes found hers before anything else. The reunion had been something I dreaded, to be honest. Too many people I'd left behind, too many memories I wasn't sure I wanted to revisit. But then there was Evelyn. Back in college, she was the girl who existed on the periphery of my world, close enough to matter but never close enough to touch. We had shared classes, late-night study groups, and a handful of conversations that always felt unfinished. She had been engaged to someone then, a tall, serious man who always hovered near her, and so I had tucked away whatever I felt for her deep into a place I never thought I'd need to revisit. Life carried us forward. I married Rachel, my college sweetheart. Evelyn married Daniel, a businessman who built a fortune and gave her the life many envied. And yet, that night as she smiled across the room, everything that had been buried came rushing back like a tidal wave. Her hair, now a little shorter, but still catching the light the way it once had, framed her face in a way that made her look almost younger. She looked at me as if the years hadn't passed, as if we were still those two people who had sat across a library table, stealing glances, not saying what we wanted to. "Michael," she said, her voice softer than the clinking of glasses around. "Yus," but somehow louder than all the chatter in the room. "Evelyn." I smiled, and it felt both foreign and familiar. We spent the first hour making small talk jobs, families, the usual. I told her about Rachel, about our 2 children. She told me about Daniel, about their travels, their big house outside the city. But beneath every word there was something trembling, something unsaid. Every time her hand brushed mine, whether reaching for her glass or gesturing in excitement, I felt a jolt that reminded me of all the nights I used to imagine her fingers intertwined with mine. The party we're on, people mingling, some already leaving, but Evelyn and I stayed rooted to each other. At some point, we slipped away, unnoticed, into the quieter lounge just outside the ballroom. The air was cooler there, softer, and the music was faint. She leaned back against the leather couch, her eyes never leaving mine. "Do you ever think," she asked quietly, "about what would have happened if things had been different?" My chest tightened all the time. She looked down, twisting, her wedding ring slightly, the diamond catching the dim light. "Daniel's a good man. He's given me everything I thought I wanted. But sometimes I wonder if I ever stopped wanting something else." I swallowed hard, guilt already clawing at me because Rachel's face flashed in my mind. But sitting there with Evelyn so close, it was impossible to deny the weight of what was happening between us. When I reached for her hand, it wasn't conscious. It was instinct, years of restraint finally snapping. Her fingers tightened around mine, and the way she looked at me in that moment, like I was the answer to a question she had been asking all her life, made it impossible to pull back. We didn't talk much after that. Words would have only complicated what was already unraveling. Instead, we found ourselves walking together through the empty hotel corridor, neither of us suggesting it, but both of us knowing exactly where we were heading. By the time we reached the quiet corner room she had reserved for the night, my heart was pounding so loudly I thought it might give us away. Inside, it was dark except for the glow of the city lights filtering through the window. She closed the door slowly, her back still against it, her chest rising and falling as if she were trying to catch her breath. "This is wrong," she whispered, though her voice trembled, and her eyes searched mine not for refusal, but for permission. "No," I said, stepping closer, so close I could feel the heat of her skin. "But I can't walk away from you. Not tonight." And then, finally, after 12 years of stolen glances, of almost confessions and buried feelings, our lips met. It was desperate, urgent, like both of us were starving and had only just found the food we needed to survive. Her hands clutched at my shirt, pulling me closer while mine slid around her waist. Holding her like she might vanish if I let go, the hours that followed blurred into something I could barely process. Every touch, every whispered name, every laugh and gasp, it all felt like a lifetime collapsing into a single night. For the first time, I wasn't imagining what it would be like to love Evelyn. I was living it. When the sun began to creep through the curtains, the reality of what we had done started to settle in. She lay beside me, her hair spread out on the pillow, her eyes tired but alive in a way I hadn't seen before. She traced the outline of my hand with her finger, silent, as though words would shatter whatever fragile magic we'd created. "I don't know what happens now," she said finally, her voice thick with both fear and longing. "Neither do I admitted. "But I know this wasn't just a mistake. It was everything I wanted and never let myself have. We both knew we couldn't tell anyone. We both knew our lives, our families, our worlds were built on foundations too fragile to withstand this. Truth. But we also knew that something had changed forever when I left that morning, buttoning my shirt with shaky fingers and forcing myself to walk out into the bright, unforgiving day. I carried with me a secret I would never be able to share. Evelyn wasn't just an old college friend anymore. She was the part of me I had always hidden, the part that had finally come alive. And though we promised never to speak of that night again, I knew it would haunt me for the rest of my life, not as a regret, but as the night honesty finally broke. US free, only to bind us in ways no one else could ever understand. The weeks that followed the reunion felt unreal, as if I had stepped into a parallel life where everything familiar remained, but nothing was the same. At home, Rachel greeted me with her usual warmth, kissed me softly on the cheek, and asked how the reunion had gone. I told her it was fine, that it was good to see everyone again. I didn't mention Evelyn. I didn't dare, but Evelyn lingered. In my mind, like the faint scent of perfume on a shirt long after the person wearing it had gone. Every quiet moment, when I drove to work, when I stood in the shower, when Rachel dozed beside me, I found myself replaying that night. The way Evelyn had whispered my name like a secret. The way her touch had set fire to everything I thought I understood about myself. She texted me a week later. Just a simple message. "I can't stop thinking about you." My hands trembled. When I read it, the weight of what it meant pressing down on me. I typed, erased, retyped, until finally I sent, "Neither can I." That small admission opened the door to something we had both been trying to pretend wasn't there. Messages became calls, calls turned into stolen moments. We would meet at cafes far from our neighborhoods, sitting in shadowed corners where no one would recognize us. Sometimes we wouldn't even speak much, just hold hands under the table, hearts beating like we were guilty teenagers instead of adults with spouses, families, and lives that should have kept us grounded. One afternoon, we met in a small hotel, by the river not far from where the city lights danced on the water. I remember the way her eyes shone as she walked toward me in the lobby, her coat wrapped tightly around her, her face nervous but eager. When the door closed behind us, all the anxiety melted away. She kissed me like she had been holding her breath since the last time, and I pulled her against me as if I had been drowning afterward, as we lay together with tangled sheets and tired. Smiles, she told me things she had never told anyone. That her marriage had been crumbling for years, that Daniel gave her comfort but not passion, stability but not intimacy. "I've been a wife in name only for so long," she whispered, her voice breaking. "And then you came back and I felt alive again. I don't know what to do with that." I told her the truth I hadn't even admitted to myself, that Rachel and I had grown distant too, not from lack of love, but from the slow erosion of routine, of years spent putting the kids and work and bills ahead of us. Evelyn had awakened something I thought I had lost forever, the feeling of being wanted. Not for what I provided, but for who I was. Our affair grew reckless. We found excuses to see each other, business trips, late nights at the office, sudden errands that couldn't be explained. Each meeting carried the thrill of danger, the risk of discovery, but also the unbearable sweetness. of a love that felt both forbidden and inevitable. There were moments of guilt that hit me harder than I wanted to admit. The time Rachel surprised me with dinner after work, her smile radiant, her eyes proud as she told me she had missed me. The time my son asked if I would come to his soccer game and I hesitated because Evelyn had asked me to meet her. In those moments, the weight of my choices threatened to crush me. But then Evelyn would call, her voice trembling as she said she needed me, and all the guilt dissolved into desire. Months passed like this, an intoxicating blend of stolen hours and dangerous longing. Every kiss with Evelyn felt like it carried the weight of a lifetime. Every touch like it was both a promise and a betrayal. She became the part of my life that no one else could see, the secret pulse beneath the surface of my carefully constructed world, but secrets like ours never stay hidden forever. One night, as we sat in her car by the edge of the park, rain tapping against the windshield, Evelyn turned to me with eyes full of tears. "Michael, I can't do this anymore," she whispered. "I can't keep living half a life. I love you. And I want you, but not like this, not in shadows, not as a secret." Her words pierced me in a way nothing else had. I realized then that we had reached the edge of something dangerous, something that could destroy not only our marriages, but everything we had built. And yet, the thought of letting her go felt like tearing out a piece of my own heart. I leaned across the console, kissed her forehead, and held her as she cried softly into my shoulder. My own tears burned behind my eyes, though I forced them down. Because the truth was, I didn't know if I was strong enough to leave Rachel. I didn't know if Evelyn was strong enough to leave Daniel. What we had was beautiful, but it was also fragile, a flame flickering in the wind, threatening to consume us both. Still, as I drove home that night, her words echoed in my mind. "I love you, but not like this." And for the first time, I began to wonder if what had started as a reunion of old friends might end as a decision that would change everything, not just for us, but for everyone we loved. The choice lay before. U.S. Bury what we had and pretend it never happened, or risk everything for the chance at a life together. Either way, the night we reunited had already altered the course of our lives forever. The weeks after Evelyn said she couldn't live in the shadows anymore were some of the hardest of my life. Every conversation we had carried the weight of something unsaid, as though we were both circling around the same truth, but afraid to speak it out loud. At home, Rachel noticed my distance. She asked more often if I was tired, if work was stressing me out, if something was wrong. I gave her vague answers, kissed her cheek, and promised her I was fine. The guilt sat on me like a heavy coat I couldn't take off. Evelyn and I kept meeting, though less frequently, as if by pulling back we could somehow lessen the damage we had already done. But each time we tried to keep our distance, we ended up breaking it. She'd text late at night when her husband had fallen asleep beside her, and I'd feel my phone buzzing on the nightstand while Rachel slept inches away from me. That vibration was like a call to something I couldn't resist. I'd sneak out into the hallway, whisper into the phone, and hear Evelyn's voice trembling with need and sadness. "I miss you," she'd say. And I'd whisper it back because it was the only truth that mattered in those stolen moments. One evening, I told Rachel I had a work dinner. Instead, I met Evelyn at a quiet Italian restaurant across town, the kind of place with dim lighting and candles on every table. She wore a simple black dress, her hair down around her shoulders, and when she looked at me, it was as if the whole world fell away. Dinner was filled with laughter, soft touches under the table, the kind of connection that felt effortless, like breathing. But as dessert came and the plates were cleared, her smile faded. She reached for my hand, her thumb tracing circles over my skin. "Michael," she said softly, "I can't keep lying. Not to Daniel, not to myself. I love you, but this isn't enough anymore. I need to know if you're willing to make a choice." Her words struck me like lightning. I wanted to tell her yes, that I'd leave Rachel and start a life with her, but the thought of actually doing it terrified me. I thought about my children, about the years Rachel and I had built together, about the life that had been safe even if it wasn't passionate. Was I really willing to burn all of that down? We left the restaurant and walked through the city streets, her arm looped through mine. The air was cool, the lights shimmering on wet pavement from an earlier rain. She stopped under a street lamp and turned to face me, her eyes glistening. "If you can't give me more than this," she said, her voice breaking, "then I need to let you go." I pulled her into my arms, kissed her with a desperation that almost hurt, and whispered, "Don't let go of me, please. I need you too much." And so we kept going, tangled in a web of desire and guilt, promises and silence. Every time I thought about ending it, I saw her smile, felt her touch, and I knew I couldn't. And every time I thought about leaving Rachel, I saw her folding laundry in the living room, humming softly to herself, or laughing with our children. And I knew I wasn't ready to shatter her world either. It all came to a breaking point one weekend when Rachel suggested we take a trip together, just the two of us to rekindle what we'd lost. I agreed, hoping that maybe a change of scenery would make me see things clearly again. We booked a cabin in the mountains, far from the noise of the city. For the first 2 days, it almost worked. We cooked together, sat by the fireplace, even made love for the first time in months. But the whole time, I felt a ghost between us. Evelyn was everywhere in the way Rachel touched me, in the silences that stretched too long, in the laughter that didn't feel quite real. On the third night, while Rachel slept beside me, I stepped outside onto the porch with my phone. The stars glittered above me and the air was sharp with cold. My hand shook as I dialed Evelyn's number. When she answered, her voice was soft, almost sleepy. But the moment she said my name, I broke. I confessed everything, that I couldn't let her go, that I was drowning in guilt, that I didn't know how to choose. There was a long silence on her end. Finally, she whispered, "Michael, we can't keep living like this. If you love me, then love me fully. But if you can't, then please let me walk away before we destroy each other." Her words left me breathless. I stared out at the stars, Rachel asleep inside, Evelyn's voice trembling through the phone, and I realized that no matter what choice I made, someone's heart would be shattered. Maybe even all of ours, and yet when I whispered back, "I love you," I knew that the path I was on was only leading me further into the fire. The weeks after that mountain trip blurred together, but the weight of Evelyn's ultimatum stayed lodged in my chest like a stone. Every night when I came home, Rachel would greet me with her easy smile, a kiss on the cheek, and the simple rhythm of our life, but it only deepened the ache in me. Evelyn was a constant whisper at the back of my mind, her voice carrying through. Every silence I shared with my wife, we kept slipping back into each other's arms despite her plea for clarity. It was as though the pull between us was stronger than reason, stronger than guilt. Some evenings I would tell Rachel I had late meetings at the office, and instead I'd find myself standing outside Evelyn's house, waiting for her to open the door. Her husband traveled often, and those nights felt stolen, carved out of time itself. Inside, she would pull me close before I could even speak, her lips pressing against mine with an urgency that left no room for hesitation. We would collapse onto her sofa, then her bed, wrapped in a desperate passion that neither of us could quit. Afterwards, lying in her sheets, she would whisper about what a life together might look like. Imagine waking up like this every morning. No sneaking around, no lies, just us. I'd listen, my fingers tracing the curve of her shoulder, and part of me wanted nothing more than to say yes. But when I thought about Rachel, about my children, about everything I stood to lose, the words always stuck in my throat. One night, Evelyn pressed me harder than ever. "Michael," she said, her eyes searching mine, "do you even love me? Or am I just an escape for you?" Her voice cracked, and I saw the fear behind her anger. I cupped her face, told her. I loved her more than I had ever thought possible, but even as the words left me, I felt the shadow of doubt. Could love exist in the middle of betrayal? Or was it all just a fragile illusion we were building on broken promises? Things grew more complicated when Rachel began to notice the changes she couldn't ignore. She asked me why I smiled at my phone so often, why I suddenly worked late more nights than not, why I seemed both distant and restless at home. I lied smoothly at first, years of trust dictioning my excuses. But one evening, she looked me in the eye and asked quietly, "Michael, is there someone else?" The air froze between us. I laughed it off, kissed her forehead, told her she was imagining things. She smiled weakly and let it go, but I knew she didn't believe me, not entirely. The more Rachel suspected, the more dangerous everything felt. But instead of pulling away, Evelyn and I only clung tighter. Every kiss, every touch, felt like it could be our last, and that desperation only fueled the fire between us. When we made love, it wasn't just passion, it was need, the kind of need that burned deep and left scars. The breaking point came one rainy Friday night. Rachel had taken the kids to visit her mother for the weekend, and I went straight to Evelyn's. The storm outside roared, wind rattling the windows, thunder shaking the walls. But inside her house it was quiet, just the sound of our breathing and the pounding of our hearts. After, as we lay together, Evelyn turned on her side and looked at me with tear-filled eyes. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. "I can't share you. If you love me, really love me, you have to prove it. I need to be more than the woman you visit when your wife isn't around." Her words cut through me. I wanted to tell her everything she needed to hear, but before I could speak, my phone lit up on the nightstand. Rachel's name flashed on the screen. My blood ran cold. Evelyn saw it too, and for the first time, she didn't look angry, she just looked broken. I answered, my voice shaking. Rachel's tone was quiet, almost too calm. "Michael, I know. I don't know who she is, but I know. When you come home, we need to talk." She hung up before I could reply. I sat there, the phone still in my hand, Evelyn staring at me with wide eyes. The storm raged outside, but the silence between us was louder than any thunder. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away, standing and pacing the room like a man trapped in a cage of his own making. That night, for the first time, the weight of what I had done pressed down on me fully. I wasn't just cheating. I was destroying two women who had given me their trust, their hearts, and their love. And I had no idea which one I was about to lose forever.